Okay. I may have been wrong about the iMac Pro, because we are hearing a lot about the next iMac Pro that makes it sound like not only will this iMac be my dream desktop computer, but it also sounds like it will indeed be more powerful than what Apple is offering with the MacBook Pro chips. And this could be the ultimate all-in-one desktop powerhouse that I have been waiting for. Oh, and you might have been waiting for it too. So get subscribed and hit the like button, and let's throw this video into the YouTube algorithm so everyone can hear all about this next generation iMac, and I think it's going to be quite a powerhouse of a machine. First of all, let's talk about the iMac Pro as a whole, because I think there is a whole lot of unknowns right now, because we kind of have conflicting rumors based on sources like Dylan NKT on Twitter saying that this new iMac will resemble the design of the M1 iMac, but at the same time also look like a Pro Display XDR. And I'm sorry, you just can't have it both ways, because the Pro Display XDR, there's no bezels on that device. And if you look at something like the M1 iMac, well, it has full white bezels and a full chin at the bottom. So I don't see how it can look like both. So we don't have any design confirmation on what the iMac Pro will look like, but I do think we can make some fair assumptions based on Apple's product lineup right now, and maybe we'll throw Dylan NKT a bone here and kind of give him just some credit on this design rumor. And I think we can learn a lot based on looking at Apple's consumer level product lineup for the Mac and their Pro level lineup. So first of all, I think this iMac Pro has a good chance to have a unique design that will separate it from the M1 iMac while still looking like an iMac. And what I mean by that is I would expect that this iMac would have black bezels that are even more reduced than what we have on the 24-inch iMac, and much closer in bezel size to what you would get with that Pro Display XDR. I could also see Apple adding rounded corners to the top of this iMac, just like they did on the recent MacBook Pro. However, I do not think we will see the removal of the iMac chin, because it serves a functional purpose, and it's a great place to not only store the computer's chips like we saw on the M1 iMac, but it's an even better place to put bigger and beefier speakers in there for better sound quality. And the sound quality on the recent M1 Pro MacBook Pros is so good even on that smaller 14-inch model that I don't think Apple wants to skimp out here on their desktop class iMac Pro. I really think these speakers are going to be pretty good. It also can't be a direct one-to-one bigger version of the M1 iMac, because this iMac Pro will need to be thicker if it hopes to have a bigger port selection than the 4 USB-C port M1 iMac. And I think there's a good chance that this iMac Pro will obviously have more ports for a desktop machine, as it really wouldn't make sense if Apple's portable MacBook Pro had even more port options than a full desktop class computer. My best guess on what ports you would see in this iMac Pro is probably something like 4 Thunderbolt USB-C ports, an SD card slot, an Ethernet port, and not an HDMI port. I know there's rumors that there will be an HDMI port on this next iMac Pro, but Apple has just never offered an HDMI port on the iMac, and it has a built-in display, so it's even less likely that you'll be hooking this up to an external monitor. Speaking of the iMac display, I think it's going to wow us even more than what we got on the beautiful 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro. That's just because of the sheer size of this 27-inch display, which based on rumors seems to be staying the same size as the current iMac display. However, the quality of this display will just be crazy thanks to the adoption of mini LED display technology. That's the same technology being used in the MacBook Pro display, which will give us a 1,000,000-to-1 contrast ratio for deep black levels and an HDR capable display of up to the same rating of 1600 nits of peak brightness for HDR video, making this iMac not only one of the best and most gorgeous displays for watching movies and also like everyday tasks, but also an all-in-one workstation for HDR film production. Now you're probably wondering where I was wrong about this iMac Pro analysis, especially if you're a returning viewer, because I've basically told you all of this information in videos dating back months about this product. Well, the area where I may have been wrong is by saying that the iMac Pro wouldn't be special, because I was speculating that the Apple Silicon rumors back then, that Apple was not going to be using separate chips for the iMac Pro. That basically, based on what we knew back then, that they might have been using the same exact chips that were going to be in the MacBook Pro. And it looks like that might not actually be happening, Well, technically, because Apple will be reusing chips, but in kind of a different way. And I really started to unravel this thread the minute the order pages for the new MacBook Pros went up, and I saw so many different bin chip configurations for the M1 Pro and M1 Max chip. And a bin chip, for those of you that don't know, is basically a chip that didn't meet the standards or the full specification. So let's say the M1 Pro targeted that 10-core CPU design, and Apple had one with like 1 or 2 defective cores. Well, it would start selling an 8-core CPU version by disabling those defective or, cores that couldn't run at a higher clock speed. That's the short and simple, dumbed down version of what's happening here. But basically, that's what happened with the M1 Max and Pro chips. And we have been hearing rumors, of course, about a future of Apple Silicon scaled up, with the MacBook Pro chips being turned into even more powerful desktop class chips that would basically take the M1 Max and combine 2 of those processors into one, and then an even more powerful quad version of the M1 Max that would have configurations with up to 40 CPU cores and 128 GPU cores. Of course, this line of thinking would work for the iMac Pro as well. So based on the rumors we have about the Mac Pro, and knowing that Apple is fully ready to sell lower bin versions of these chips, something I didn't even think they would do when we were first looking at these, M1X or now M1 Pro rumors, well, that obviously means that Apple could pursue the same strategy here for the iMac Pro, and Apple could take the dual, M1 Max or M1 Pro chip and combine that into a really powerful iMac chip. And because we already have the reports of them working on this for the Mac Pro, if some of those chips didn't realize their full potential, like if we got a bin 16 or 18 core version CPU of the dual M1 Max chip, well, what better candidate for those chips than by putting them into something like a future iMac Pro? The power in those chips would be plenty for Apple's desktop iMac, and it would mean, more importantly, that Apple has a gradual step up in computing power as we move from M1 machines to the M1 Pro MacBook Pro, and then more powerful desktop options with this rumored iMac Pro. And this makes so much sense when you start to unpack all of the chip design and scaling up the future of Apple Silicon. And this would be a good thing, because I was really worried that Apple would take the easy way out and pursue the same strategy they did with the first M1 Max and just slap the same M1 Pro and M1 Max chips into all of these computers. And that would make the option of buying a desktop iMac much less appealing than you would have in the past, because, the desktop versions of the Mac usually have some sort of power advantage, and if Apple was going to put the same M1 Max chip in the MacBook Pro and then put that in the iMac Pro, well, you wouldn't have that desktop power advantage anymore. Thankfully, based on these rumors and leaks, it looks like I may have been wrong, and Apple will indeed have more powerful versions of these chips, not only for the Mac Pro, but also for products like the iMac Pro as well, and it just makes me really excited to see what we will finally get with this product, because the M1 is already powerful, the M1 Pro and Max are on another level, and it's hard to imagine just how much power we are going to be getting in these Apple Silicon Macs for 2022, and ones that don't need to worry about all the battery life constraints of being in a laptop form factor. These M1 chips or M1 Max or M1 Ultra chips, whatever you want to call them, are going to be unleashed and just show us the true power of what Apple is capable of with custom Apple Silicon. So yes, hopefully I was wrong about the iMac Pro, and hopefully we are just a few months away from seeing how powerful Apple Silicon can be, with the rumored release of this iMac Pro looking to be around sometime in March of 2022. So if you want even more updates and analysis as I get it, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and if you like this video, be sure to leave me a like. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.